I'm a United States Navy Admiral. 2 stars on my collar, 30 years of service behind me, and on a quiet Tuesday morning, I walked into a small bank branch to withdraw $400. Just 400. Grocery money. Nothing more. The teller typed my account number into her computer, and I watched her face change. Her smile faded. Her hands slowed down. She looked at the screen again, like she thought she'd made a mistake. Then she looked up at me, and her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "Ma'am, you're going to need to sit down." I laughed. At first, I thought maybe there was a problem. A frozen account. A fraud alert. Something small and fixable. I had no idea that in the next 10 minutes, I would learn something that would tear apart everything I thought I knew about my own family and set into motion a reckoning that had been building for over a year. This is the story of how a simple withdrawal exposed a betrayal I never saw coming, and how I made sure the people responsible answered for it. My name is Admiral Vivian Cross. I've spent 3 decades in the Navy, submarines, fleet logistics, 2 years running a carrier strike group's operations department. My rank isn't something I flaunt at home. To my family, I was never the Admiral. I was just Vivian, the daughter who was always deployed, the sister who missed birthdays, the one who sent money home instead of showing up in person. That guilt is what my younger brother, Marcus, used against me for years. When our father passed away, he left behind a modest trust, a retirement account, a small piece of land, some savings. Nothing extravagant, but enough to matter. Because I was stationed overseas so often, I asked Marcus to help manage the paperwork. I trusted him. He was family. He handled the accounts, paid the property taxes, kept me updated with the occasional email. I never once thought to check the details myself. I was too busy running operations halfway across the world to worry about spreadsheets. That trust was the mistake that started everything. The first sign something was wrong came 18 months ago. I asked Marcus for a routine update on the trust balance, and his answer was vague. "It's fine, don't worry about it," he said. "I've got it handled." A year later, I asked again. This time he got defensive. "Why do you suddenly care so much? You're never even here." That stung. But I let it go. I told myself he was stressed, his construction business had been struggling, and I didn't want to add pressure. I kept trusting him, even as small things didn't add up. A property tax notice that arrived a month late. A statement that never came. A phone call that ended too quickly whenever I asked specific numbers. Looking back now, every one of those moments was a warning sign I chose to ignore because believing my own brother was stealing from me felt impossible. Family doesn't do that. Family is supposed to be the one thing you never have to guard against. I was wrong. That Tuesday, I wasn't even thinking about the trust. I was there for something unrelated, my personal checking account, the one I used for everyday expenses. $400, a routine withdrawal before a trip to visit my mother. But the teller wasn't looking at my checking account. She was looking at something else entirely, a linked account flagged under my name that I hadn't accessed in years. The trust account. The one Marcus had supposedly been handling. "Ma'am," she said again, calling over her branch manager, "there's something you need to see." The manager sat me down in a private office. On the screen were months of transaction records. Withdrawals I never made. Transfers to an account I didn't recognize. And a balance that had dropped from just over $600,000 to less than $11,000. $600,000. Gone. My hands went cold. My chest tightened. For a moment, I couldn't even speak. 30 years of discipline, of staying calm under pressure in situations far more dangerous than a bank office, and I still had to grip the edge of the desk to keep steady. The manager printed everything for me, every transfer, every date, every destination account. I recognized the routing number before she even finished explaining it. It matched an account Marcus had opened 2 years earlier, right around the time his construction business started falling apart. He hadn't just mismanaged the trust. He had systematically drained it, transfer by transfer, small enough each time to avoid drawing attention, but steady enough that over 18 months, he had taken almost everything our father left behind. And the worst part wasn't even the money. It was the years of lies. Every "don't worry about it." Every "I've got it handled." Every guilt trip about how little time I spent with the family. All of it had been a smokescreen, carefully built to keep me from asking the questions that would have exposed him sooner. I sat in that office and felt something shift inside me. Not rage, not yet. Something colder. The same clarity I felt before a difficult mission. I wasn't going to yell. I wasn't going to confront him in a moment of emotion he could spin into a story about how unstable or dramatic I was being. I was going to build a case, the same way I'd been trained to handle any operation, quietly, methodically, and with absolute certainty before I made a single move. I spent the next 3 weeks gathering everything. I requested full statements going back 2 years. I contacted the bank's fraud department and opened a formal investigation. I hired a forensic accountant who specialized in trust mismanagement, someone who could trace every transfer and lay it out in a way no court could dismiss. What we found was worse than I expected. Marcus hadn't just been draining the trust for himself. He had used part of the stolen money to keep his failing business afloat, and another portion had gone toward a new truck, a family vacation, and a down payment on a house he'd been secretly planning to move into, all while telling our mother and me that money was tight for everyone. I also learned something else. He wasn't acting entirely alone. Our father's trust required 2 signatures for withdrawals over a certain amount. Marcus had forged our mother's signature more than once, exploiting the fact that she was in her 70s and never checked her own paperwork closely. That detail changed everything. This wasn't just a betrayal against me. It was a betrayal against our mother too, and she had no idea it was happening in her name. I didn't call Marcus. I didn't send an angry text. Instead, I arranged a family dinner, the kind we hadn't had in years, and I invited our mother, Marcus, and the forensic accountant, introduced simply as a friend helping me with some paperwork. Marcus showed up relaxed, confident, cracking the same old jokes about how the Navy had turned me into someone who takes everything too seriously. He had no idea what was coming. Partway through dinner, I set the folder on the table.
Calm.
Deliberate. No raised voice. I went to withdraw $400 last month, I said. And the teller told me I needed to sit down. I watched the color drain from his face as I opened the folder and started reading transaction dates aloud. Our mother's hand flew to her mouth when she saw her own forged signature on the withdrawal slips. Marcus tried to interrupt, tried to explain, tried the same tired lines he'd used for a year and a half. It's not what it looks like. I was going to pay it back. You don't understand how hard things have been. I let him talk until he ran out of excuses. Then I told him exactly what came next. The fraud department had already frozen the receiving account. The forensic report went to the bank's legal team, and because forged signatures were involved, it escalated into a criminal matter, not just a civil dispute between siblings. Our mother, devastated but resolute once she understood the full picture, gave a statement confirming her signature had been used without her knowledge or consent. Marcus was charged with financial fraud and forgery. He avoided prison through a plea agreement that required full restitution, a lengthy probation period, and mandatory financial counseling. His construction business, already struggling, collapsed entirely once the case became public in our small town. The truck was repossessed. The house deal fell through. I want to be clear about something. I didn't do any of this out of cruelty. I gave him every chance, quietly, to come clean before I ever opened that file at dinner. He chose to keep lying, right up until the evidence was sitting in front of him. The consequences he faced weren't something I inflicted on him out of anger. They were simply what happens when you're finally held accountable for choices you thought no one would ever uncover. It took over a year, but eventually, most of the money was recovered through the restitution order and insurance on the account. My mother and I grew closer through the process in a strange way. For the first time in years, we talked honestly about money, about family, about the assumptions we'd both made that let this happen for as long as it did. Marcus and I are not close anymore. We speak occasionally, mostly logistics around our mother's care, nothing more. I've made peace with that. Trust, once broken this completely, doesn't simply rebuild itself, because time has passed. But I don't regret pursuing the truth. I don't regret the discomfort of that dinner, or the months of quiet work that led up to it. Some people believe that keeping the peace means staying silent, even when you know something is deeply wrong. I used to believe that too. Not anymore. I think about that day in the bank often. $400 and a teller's trembling voice telling me to sit down. It's strange how something so small can crack open a truth that had been hidden for years. Should never mean closing your eyes to your own life. Checking in, asking questions, staying informed about the people managing your affairs. That isn't paranoia. That's responsibility. The people who truly respect you will never resent you for it. The ones who do usually have something to hide. I earn my rank by staying alert, by never assuming a situation was safe just because it looked calm on the surface. It turns out that lesson applies just as much at home as it does anywhere. If this story meant something to you, or reminded you of your own family, let me know in the comments. And if you believe accountability matters, even when it's family, make sure you're subscribed for more stories like this one.